Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's the Scott and Scott Show, brought to you by DocSports.com. He's Scott Rickenbach. I'm Scott Spreitzer, and we are here to help you guys get a little bit of an update on where the early money has come in from the Sharps. The Sharps always at those games on Sunday afternoons, early Sunday evenings for the next week, and we've been reporting on those all season long. We're going to talk about the conference championships in college football. We're going to talk about this week's upcoming NFL slate and where the money has come in thus far, 3 or 4 games that have taken some hits. Before we do all of that, and also before we get to the best bet at the end of the show from each of us, just a quick note on that $60 free account. If you're not yet a member at DocSports.com, just want to give it a trial run, click on that link below the video and get yourself set up for the free $60 account. And then you can use the free $60 on any of our daily packages over at DocSports.com. And Scott have been doing quite well over at DocSports.com. And we both had another nice weekend. It included for me 5-3 overall, but another top play sweep, college and pro football. Super easy winner on Sunday night with the Commanders as a 6-star play. Tongue in cheek, nobody get excited. And we also cashed that 7-star on Saturday. So it's been a tremendous run. And Scott, I know you've been kicking butt since the moment you arrived at Docs.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great, and it's been a solid football season, and the top plays are rolling. I did it again this weekend with having Oregon as my 7 unit on Saturday, part of a 2-1 day in college, and then 2-1 in NFL with my top game 5-unit play was on the Buffalo Bills on Sunday. So another nice weekend, and look to keep it rolling, Scott. Let's both stay hot with this football action.
We're sitting in 5th at the Super Contest right now in the NFL, and in the money at Circa. Maybe I shouldn't put that out there, but if anybody wants to give us some good vibes, fire away as we look to stay hot this coming week. All right, let's get to it, Scott. Enough of that. We're going to kick things off with college football championship games. I wanted to mention, though, before we get to the Saturday games, including that Big 12 game on your screen, that there have been a couple of Friday conference championship moves as far as the sharp money coming in. They've hit James Madison. They've hit Boise State. Each have received the money thus far. James Mad went from 20.5 to 22.5 over Troy. He's currently sitting at 22 to 22.5. And Boise opened up 3. They're basically 3.5 everywhere. And that's a home game for Boise, by the way. They're playing on the Smurf turf against UNLV. They've gone from 3 to 3.5. Let's jump into Saturday's game, Scott. Big 12 from Arlington, Texas. We've got Texas Tech laying 13 to BYU. This one opened up 11. I've seen 13.5 now as we jump into showtime. You know, I had Tech over BYU for a 7-star a month ago, and that game was played in Lubbock. And Tech closed a 13.5-point favorite in that one on their home turf. Yet when the books accounted for this neutral field, and folks, BYU will travel. They'll bring their fans to Arlington. They got hit with Red Raiders money right away. BYU scored late for me on Saturday. It was great to get that win. They've been dialed in, or I've been dialed in on this team. They've been dialed in on the Big 12. But, Scott, basically the line is where it was when it was in Lubbock.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like you said, the BYU does travel well, but still the location of this game in Dallas, I would say, does, favor the Red Raiders a bit. But interesting about that opening line for sure. Like you said, they blew out the Cougars 29-7 in early November in Lubbock. But keep in mind, the Cougars did lose the turnover battle 3-0 in that one. And BYU just could not get their run game going in that matchup. That remains the Cougars' only loss, however, and these are big points. I mean, Texas Tech, though, it's hard to argue with. But other than their upset win at Arizona State, all 11 of their wins, this is incredible, by a margin of 22 points or more. So keep in mind, though, other than that game against the Sun Devils, the Red Raiders win over BYU is the only other game this season in which Texas Tech did not score at least 30 points. So considering how big this number is, I'm leaning toward the points with BYU in this one, but I certainly understand the early move. Should be a great game here.
Yeah, and when I had that 7-star on Tech, I remember watching the entire first quarter, and I was thinking, boy, this looks like it's going to be a lot closer, then it ended up 29-7. But like you said, Brigham Young just couldn't get the offense going. So interesting line there. Georgia and Alabama doing battle for the SEC title. That, of course, in Atlanta. Georgia opened 1.5. They're up to 2.5. They closed 2.5 in the meeting at home between the hedges earlier this season. Of course, Bama won that game 24-21. The books accounted again for this neutral field in Atlanta, Georgia, but the bettors drove it up on Sunday afternoon. I do remember Ty Simpson having the big game for the Tide, especially in the first 2+ quarters. their lack of a ground game almost cost them. And that's something I think to be aware of with Bama in this game. And then, of course, when they get to the postseason, you got to watch out because that team doesn't run the football that well.
Yeah, yeah, and Georgia, they were not impressive against Georgia Tech, but Alabama barely escaped Auburn with the win, and the Crimson Tide were outgained 411 to 280 in that game and benefited from 2 Tigers turnovers as well. So that was part of the equation there. Alabama, I can't believe, has won 10 of the last 11 meetings with Georgia, and again, they did win at Athens in late September in a tight game. Alabama's only loss since that seasoning opening loss to Florida State this season was a 2-point loss to Oklahoma. And the Tide actually outgained the Sooners by about 200 yards in that game. So I do respect the move here toward Georgia, but keep in mind the series history on this one and the fact that Alabama could easily be on an 11-game winning streak now, considering how that OU game played out. So, however, all of that being said, still, I'm leaning toward Georgia early on with this one. That's the way I'm looking. I agree with this move.
Had a head coach firmly on the hot seat after losing to Florida State. I still can't believe they lost to the Seminoles with the way Alabama's season ended up and the way the Seminoles ended up.
Yes.
To the Big Ten. 2 years ago, we knew we'd be talking about Indiana in the Big Ten title game, right, Scott?
Right, yes.
They're playing this game in Indianapolis. Indiana has gone from a 6.5-point dog on the opener to a 5.5-point dog. The Buckeyes get their first look at Curt Cignetti, and this will be the best defense the Buckeyes have faced this season, and a ground game that's better than their own on offense. Indiana's ground game is strong. Neither team needs to win this for a playoff spot, obviously, and a chance to win the national title. But interesting matchup. And, I don't know if I'm going to be on this game or not, but I can't disagree with Indiana getting love from the bettors on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it's funny, Scott. That's what I had to open up here is that statement is, first off, what a game this will be, but it's hard to argue with the move toward Indiana. And considering, too, that this line opened up around a full TD. But yeah. Ohio State certainly impressed in that win at Michigan, and they have been quite dominant ever since that seasoning opening win over Texas, in which they were outgained. But Indiana, they showed me a lot in that win at Oregon early this season and have certainly proven they are the real deal now. However, their only other win over a ranked team was against Illinois, who ended up, of course, getting knocked out of the top 25. So we need to be careful putting too much weight into just the one win at Oregon. I do realize the Hoosiers have had a lot of big wins this season, but Indiana did almost lose to Penn State and truly should have lost that game. And they also got a late TD to barely sneak by Iowa. And then if you look at Ohio State, ever since that sluggish season opener win versus Texas, they have been the more impressive team in terms of dominating wins throughout the entire season. That has me leaning Buckeyes here as of now and fading this early line move. But, man, it is tough to go against this Indiana team the way they are playing.
It's going to be interesting with the Buckeyes because they really haven't faced any adversity since that first game against Texas.
Absolutely.
And, it'd be interesting to see if they're down 10-0 midway through the second or 17-7 or something like that, how they respond, because they've been out in front all season long. And again, only that Texas game showed gave them any adversity at all throughout the contest. And, if Arch Manning plays a little bit better, that might have gone the other way in that contest. Let's get to the NFL, Scott. Thursday night NFL, we got the Cowboys getting a field goal now from Detroit on the road in Detroit. That line opened Lions -4. If you look at the last 7 weeks, the Lions are 3-4 straight up, and one of those 3 wins came in overtime over the Giants, or we're talking about a 2-5 slide. You got 3 straight wins, obviously, for the Cowboys. Great acquisitions on defense a month ago have really paid off. And then Dak Prescott going nuts the last 3 games. He hit the quarterback/wide receiver lottery when he gets to have Pickens on one side and Lamb on the other side, and a pretty good tight end. Man, I'm telling you, and he's playing well, and he's being the best leader he's ever been for the Dallas Cowboys. So we saw what happened. Plus, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown for Detroit, who's listed as questionable after getting banged up last week. And again, the Cowboys now down to a field goal as far as the underdog price here.
Yeah, a lot of good points there, Scott. And I do understand the move here based on the recent Cowboys surge. But I also like having the Lions off of a loss. Both these teams, of course, were in action on Thanksgiving, and Detroit fell short while Dallas prevailed. But here's an interesting stat I looked up for this one. Detroit in regular season action is 14-0 straight up the last 14 times when they're entering a game off a loss. And all 14 wins were by a margin of at least 5 points. That does include that recent OT win by 7 over the Giants. They were coming off a loss. It took overtime. They won by 7, but still 14 straight wins in this situation, all by 5 or more points. And I know Dallas is heating up. And like you said, they made some big acquisitions and they're responding to that well. But the fact is, though, they're still just 2-4 on the road this season. The 2 wins they have are over teams that are a combined 5-19 on the year, the Jets and Raiders. So can the Cowboys get it done on the road against a still quality team, even though they've been slumping a bit? That would be my big question here. I'm going to be considering the Lions in this one for those reasons I just mentioned.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I might have told you, Scott, last week or the week before that Thanksgiving week has always been my bad week for whatever reason. I don't know if it's body clocks and all that kind of stuff changing for a lot of the athletes. But I started this week 0-1. I had the Chiefs and got beat in that one by Dallas. Of course, the Chiefs were about a 3.5 point favorite, lose outright, and it looked like, oh boy, here we go. But again, we were able to pull together and have a profitable weekend.
Yes,
able to overcome that.
Same thing for me, Scott. It's funny. I also had the Chiefs, and I thought, here we go, because the Thanksgiving week has tended to be tough for me through the year. So like I look to just survive it each year, and thankfully I did a little bit better than surviving, just like you did. We both had good weeks, thankfully. So yeah.
Stuff. Let's go to Sunday's NFL. We got the Bears at the Packers. And I get this one too, Scott, the line moving down from Green Bay laying 6 down to a 5-point favorite. I have seen right before we kicked off this video, I did see some, some 5.5s popping up on Green Bay, but that first move was 6 down to 5. And I'm not sure I agree with this movement. And I get it, man. The Bears are winning football games. They really played nobody to get there until they knocked off the Philadelphia Eagles. But again, before that, they weren't really playing anybody. And the Packers defense has been outstanding against both the run and the pass. I thought 6 was solid. I actually thought it was going to come 6.5, and then it gets bet down. You agree with this move? You agree with me, or you looked the other way?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the Packers here in this one. I know, I think the betting public, this is one of those interesting games, like from the public standpoint, they're going to look and say, well, the Bears are top of the division. Of course, these teams have nearly identical records. But if you look at it just simply from that standpoint, they're going to say, well, Green Bay's at home. They should be favored by 3 only. And so this line looks too big. This is just my opinion of how the betting public might view a game like this. But the key for me is not only the home field edge, but you touched on this, Scott, is that statistically, the Packers have a much better defense. They're so strong on defense. And the Bears, you look at their defensive numbers, it reminds me a bit of the Steelers. It's like, how do the Bears have this strong of a record? And we've seen the Steelers start to fall apart. I think we could see the same thing with the Bears. And like you said, also the level of competition, who they've actually beaten, and now beating the Eagles. The Eagles missing Lane Johnson, they're a key offensive tackle for them, and the Eagles are a bit of a mess right now. So not too sure about these Bears. And also don't forget that last year in the season finale, the Bears did beat Green Bay here in Lambeau, and Love got hurt in the second quarter of that game. That snapped an 11-game win streak for the Packers in this series. So they've had the Bears number. They're looking for payback. 7 of the 8 wins this season for Green Bay, all by at least 7 points. So I think this number actually is now too low, and I like the Packers here in this one.
Yeah, I think it's a buy low spot on Green Bay in this particular game. And again, I mentioned a couple of decent books had bumped it back up to 5.5 after dropping to 5. So hopefully the folks who do want to back Green Bay can get it at less than 6. Sunday Night Football, Houston's at Kansas City. The Texans open a 5.5 point dog. They've been bet down to 4. It's like every road dog that is getting bet down that we've been talking about thus far. This is another one. The Texans down to 4. I actually saw a couple of 3.5s popping up again right before we started cutting this video. So we've seen as low as 3.5 in this one. We know KC's dropped 4 in a row ATS. They're an overtime win against Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago from losing 4 straight games outright. We know the secondary isn't what it used to be when they were making their Super Bowl winning runs. But I'm looking at their recent schedule, Scott. They played at Buffalo, followed by at Denver, followed by home Indy, which they won in overtime, followed by at a red-hot Dallas team on a short week on Thanksgiving. Texans strong on defense, but maybe this is an offense that KC's defense can finally handle.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely understand the fading of the Chiefs right now because of the recent slip-up. But like you said, it's been a really tough schedule. And also, let's not forget, they're 5-1 at home this season. and they have won 5 in a row at home. And prior to that OT win over the Colts, the other 4 wins were all by double-digit margins. Plus, they have a rest edge here since they played on Thursday while Houston was in action Sunday. The Texans, as you mentioned, Scott, they do have that strong defense. Their confidence is growing with a 4-game win streak. But the fact is, for me, this is a tough call. I do like the Texans defense, but I don't necessarily trust them on the road here for their offense to do enough. The Chiefs are off of a loss, have that rest edge. Texans playing their best football of the season, but I don't know for this one. That's why, Scott, this is a little bit tough for me to call. Going to have to dig into this one more as the week goes on.
Yeah, and we'll be digging into all these games. The best bets, obviously, we do stick by those because we've dug into those, and that's why we call them best bets. Those are coming up in a bit. Monday Night Football saw some line movement coming in on the Sunday afternoon. Of course, Monday Night Football for next week. And the Eagles opened a 2-point favorite on the road to the LA Chargers. They're now laying a full field goal against the Chargers. And I even saw a couple of 3.5 starting to pop up late Sunday night, Scott. Chargers 4-1 run, but the wins came against bad teams. And when they took on a decent team, they got punished by Jacksonville. It was a tough spot for the Chargers with the injuries and everything. We do understand that. But the only decent team was Jacksonville since October 19th on that Jacksonville schedule. So the level of competition goes up, and you're going to have a pretty angry Philly team, I would guess. But, you hit it on the head with one of their top offensive linemen of the last decade. When he's sidelined, this team's not the same on offense, Philly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just tough to trust the Eagles right now. But the thing about the Chargers, they have been so inconsistent. They now have had 3 straight home wins by double-digit margins, but this was preceded by back-to-back home losses that were both by double-digit margins. And as you mentioned, Scott, they had some injury issues. I get that, but to get completely destroyed at Jacksonville, I mean, if you didn't watch the game, just look at the box score and see, statistically, they were just crushed. That was before their bye week. Then they come back and destroy the Raiders after the bye week. But which LA team shows up here? And the Eagles do have a rest edge since they played on Friday. But again, the issues, it's not just Lane Johnson is a big one, but the Eagles have some other injury issues too. And it's just hard for me to trust either team right now. The one thing I do want to mention is that the other time this season that the Eagles were off of back-to-back losses, they did respond with a big key road win at Minnesota. So they could do that again here. But this is another one, Scott. I know I'm repeating myself, but just going to have to dig into this one a little bit more as we get further into the week.
Get your show best bet ready. We'll get to that and mine in just a second. Folks, I wanted to mention to everybody that we're going to be back 2 weeks from now. So that would be, looking at the calendar here, December 15th will be the next show that we do. Going to be off next week. One of the reasons is the Bulls aren't going to really be all set and everything else for till after that show would be recorded, and some travel stuff going on. So it'll be 2 weeks, December 15th, for the next Scott and Scott show. You can still find all of our plays, all of our videos on the Docs YouTube page, and of course our Docs personal pages, docsports.com, if you want to check out what we've got going on each and every day of the week. Also, real quick note again, $60 free account. If you're not yet a member, click on the link below the video. Get yourself signed up for that free $60. You can use those free 60 on any of Rickenbach's daily packages, any of my daily packages over at docsports.com. Scott, take it over, buddy. Your best bet for this week's show.
Okay, I'm going to go to one of the games that we talked about here in the NFL, and I'm going to go with the Packers as my best bet. And as I mentioned there, I think the line was set this way for a reason, and I believe that in the NFL it's so important to that public perception. And I believe that the public really looks at this and thinks, wow, the Bears getting so many points here, but the line is set this way for a reason. It's going to look off to a lot of people, but I think the Packers with that defense and home field, and the fact that the Bears have, had quite a few wins against weaker competition. And I'm not so impressed with that win over the Eagles when you consider Philly's current situation. So look for Green Bay to get it done here at home and get some payback for last year's regular season-ending loss to the Bears.
Can't argue with that one. Scott Rickenbach saying to lay it with Green Bay. I'm going to go to the college ranks Friday night game. I mentioned that James Matt has gone from 20.5 up to as high as 22.5. There's still a couple of 22s, 21.5s out there if it makes a difference to you. But I'm going to back James Madison here in the Sun Belt Championship on Friday night. They're playing Troy. If you can stop or slow the James Madison ground game and force them to go up top more often than they wish to, you can hang around with this team, with the Dukes, but that's not Troy. I mean, they're 99th against the run, and they're even worse on offense when they try to run the football. That's an old bowl angle of mine. If you got a team that outrushes its opponents by 100 or more yards per game and stops the run, you've got a pretty good chance to cover some numbers. And it's appearing here in the Sun Belt Conference Championship. So I think James Matt will be able to do what they've done all year. They'll be able to establish their offense and the game itself, control of the game itself with their ground game. And I just don't believe that Troy is built to hang around with a team like James Madison. So if the Dukes are focused, there's no reason over the last couple of years of James Madison football to think they won't be focused in the SBC championship. I do believe they get the win and the cover here. So Rickenbach says, take Green Bay, lay the points. I'm going to go with James Madison, kick things off on Friday night, minus the points over Troy. And again, we'll be back in 2 weeks on December 15th with the next Scott and Scott show. But Scott and I will be here with our own individual videos all week long. We're talking college basketball, NBA. And folks, if you could do us a favor and click on that like button, we do appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe. Then you'll be privy to all the videos, all the comp plays that the guys are putting out over at DocSports.com. Any closing thoughts, Rickenbach?
I just want to say I like that selection too. Your best bet sounds great because that a team will get worn down as the game goes on too, and James Madison will just keep piling it on with that ground game, and it really wears a team down, and then they're done for. So yeah, sounds good on the best bet too, Scott.
Thanks for watching, everybody, and you know what to do. Let's put them in the win column. We'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks with Scott and Scott Show. Take care.